Hey there, this is Arthur Hill, Chief Technical Strategist at TrendInvestorPro.com. It is Thursday, January 21st, and you have tuned into our YouTube channel. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. So today I want to talk about, first we're going to go over the big three, SPY, QQQ, IWM. We've got nice tight rising channels that continue to hold as they work their way higher. So the market is doing fine short term, medium term, and long term. Then we're going to break down the breakouts in the software and internet ETFs because they got some classic patterns at work. We saw a move in bond proxies, two bond proxies, the Utilities SPDR and the Residential REITs ETF. They both are showing signs of a breakout within a slow uptrend. And then we're going to turn to Treasury bonds and gold and look at the long-term charts. So we'll start off with SPY and QQQ and IWM, just get an idea of what's happening with the broader market. And if we look at SPY here, we can see we're in the midst of the third big advance that we've had since this low there in March. And this first advance is around 53 days and 45%. Second advance was 47 bars and 19%. And then you can see this third advance is currently 54 bars and almost 18%. And so we had basically a consolidation to digest the gains that we had had up until early September. We broke out of this consolidation, and now we have a tight rising channel as SPY works its way higher. So I wouldn't call it overbought, really, because you can see this is a pretty steady rising channel. It doesn't appear to be too steep, whereas as we'll see, the one with IWM is much steeper. So here's QQQ, and it looks similar, except that it didn't have that little corrective period in June, had a big advance, hit a new high there in early September, digested the gains with a consolidation, broke out, and then we have this tight rising channel here. And that red line you see there is the Atr Trailing Stop, and that is available as part of the Trend Investor Pro Indicator Edge plugin on Stock Charts ACP. Also on this chart, you might see this indicator down below on all these is the Stoke Close, and that's also available as part of that plugin. And it turns bullish with the move above 60, and that green shading shows that it remains bullish. So QQQ and SPY look fine. They're in these tight rising channels, and as long as they hold, we don't have a correction or a pullback. We have a uptrend, a steady and stable uptrend. Now, if we look at IWM, we get a little bit of a difference here. We can see that IWM was working its way higher, and IWM was lagging up here in September, but then it got that higher high in October. And when it hit this higher high here, SPY did not have a higher high. QQQ did not have a higher high. That was the first sign of relative chart strength. And then we got the pullback held above this low here, and then got the big breakout. And if you look at this rising channel, this tight rising channel, it's much steeper than what we're seeing in SPY and QQQ. And there you can see that gain is also much more. In fact, I can extend that gain just a little bit more, but it's 40%. So this is a huge move, but we continue to hold that ATR trailing stop and the rising channel. So we'll get a correction one day, and the first sign would be if it breaks below that rising channel, then we'll have a correction within an uptrend on our hands. Now, we got a breakout in a couple of tech-related ETFs, actually in a bunch of tech-related ETFs. And here at Trend Investor Pro, I group my chart list according to the industry group or sector. And so I've got all my tech-related ETFs together, all the consumer discretionary ETFs together, all the industrials ETFs together, all the finance ETFs together, healthcare, and so on and so forth. And so that keeps me in a top-down format, and I can look at these groups. And if we look at IGV here, we can see that, yeah, sure, it was lagging a little bit because it went through a resting period here. but it had this huge 90% advance. And so this rest was a normal consolidation within an uptrend. An ascending triangle took shape. We got the breakout. And then there you can see this falling flag. And this is a classic throwback. And this is something we highlighted to subscribers. You got the breakout, the throwback, classic broken resistance turns into support. It held, and now we've got a flag breakout working there. So IGV is perking back up. Another thing we watch for is when RSI moves into that 30 to 50 zone, that signals a short-term oversold condition. And that's what I also want to look for, be on alert, is when something is short-term oversold in a long-term uptrend. So we got Stoke close, green, bullish, and we've got RSI oversold. So that was the setup there, and we've got a breakout working. There's SOX. It just continues to lead everything, a little tight pennant and a breakout. And then we look at FDN. It was very similar to what we saw in IGV. You know, you had the new high, you had this ascending triangle, the breakout, and then this falling flag and the breakout. And that's a new high in the First Trust Internet ETF. And again, there you can see RSI hitting that 30 to 50 zone. And keep in mind, it's degrees of oversold. If you're at 49, you're mildly oversold. If you're at 31, you are more oversold. And if you're at, say, 40, it's kind of like average oversold, if you will. And usually in an uptrend, you don't get RSI going below 30. If you go below 30, then you have to maybe reassess because that doesn't usually happen. So where do I get alerted to these oversold conditions that tell me, hey, you need to check out the chart? Well, at Trend Investor Pro for subscribers, I have an ETF rankings, signals, and setups table, and it's updated twice a week. And that's okay. You're not going to miss an oversold signal because what I do is I look for when RSI has dipped into the 30 to 50 zone over the last 5 days. And then I mark it as oversold on the table. So if we're in an uptrend, there's the uptrend signal there on this table based on the Stoke close indicator. And if we're oversold with RSI, I mark it. And then I've got the RSI level here just for reference. So we can see DBB, base metals, is oversold in an uptrend with RSI just below 50, very mild oversold condition. But one we picked up on last week was XLU. It's no longer oversold because it's getting a bounce. And the same with the residential REITs. And I want to look at those charts next. So here is XLU, and incidentally, all these charts that you see are part of the chart book that I publish on Trend Investor Pro on Thursdays and Saturdays. It has around 60 charts, fully annotated and with comments on the patterns and trends at work. But here's XLU, and the interesting thing about XLU is it's in a slow and steady uptrend. This is not an exciting uptrend. It's not exciting like small caps or regional banks recently, or even these tech-related ETFs that are breaking out to new highs. But if you look at the structure, you can see it zigzagging higher. And then we can see Stoke close has been bullish since early June, the green shading there. And so that means when RSI gets into that 30 to 50 zone, we have a potential setup. And XLU is a bit quirky because, it can set up for a while before finally popping. And that's what we kind of have here. It's been, setting up since late November with RSI flirting with that oversold zone there as it falls within this wedge thingy. And then you can see we had this basically surge to a higher high. This wedge retraced around 2/3 of that move, that prior move, firmed, and we're getting a breakout. So it looks like XLU may be wanting to head to the top of that rising channel. And we don't want to be talking about XLU at 70. All right, I want to be thinking about XLU when it's testing that rising 200-day, when it's in this uptrend and it's getting an oversold bounce. That's when I want to be interested in XLU, not when it's hitting a higher high and above 70. Now, the next one I want to look at is REZ. It looks exactly the same, residential REITs. And this one, you've got a lot of choice out there. You've got XLRE, you've got IYR, but XLRE is still below that June high. So, it really hasn't gone anywhere since June. But REZ does have a slight ascent working to it. So it's a little bit stronger. And you can see there's that little pop and then the long wedge and getting a breakout from that wedge as the 200-day turns up. So the bigger trend is up, Stoke closes bullish, and RSI got a bounce off that oversold zone. It was very mildly oversold because that's what happens when you get a correction like this. You get mildly oversold down there, and we're getting a breakout. And again, I don't want to be interested in REITs at 77. I want to catch the breakout from the pullback, not the new high. New highs are bullish, don't get me wrong, and they show signs of strength, but the better risk-to-reward setup is to get the breakout on the pullback, not the breakout of the new high. So I was looking at the TLT chart, and it's definitely in a downtrend here. This is a weekly chart. Huge run up there into March. And then as the stock market moved higher, you can see TLT moved lower. And so we started this decline with an outsized move to the downside, continued lower, had another outsized move to the downside after a bounce, and then another outsized move. But if you look at where TLT is structurally on this weekly chart, I see a big advance and a correction that's retraced around 2/3, and we got broken resistance turning into support. So we're at a potential reversal zone. We firmed for a week after that outsized decline and maybe ready to get a bounce, if not a counter trend bounce, maybe a breakout there. That's too early to say. But it's kind of interesting what's happening with TLT here. And then if we look at the daily chart, well, clearly a downtrend here. It became very oversold there, so maybe it's going to get an oversold bounce perhaps. And then I was interested in gold because, gold's kind of done the same thing. It's declined here, but gold is trying to get a breakout. If you look at the structure of this chart, you've got the big advance and then this 36-week advance was like 40% here, huge advance. You're deserving a correction after that. And so you pull back with a channel, you retrace 50%, you get to this broken resistance zone, and you bounce. And you're trying to get a channel breakout here, fell back, but maybe we're trying to reignite that breakout there because we're back above the rising 40-week moving average. And then you can see RSI, this is weekly RSI, getting a bounce off that 40 to 50 zone. So gold may be ready to reignite its breakout. And then briefly on the daily charts, kind of a mixed picture for gold. Still in a downtrend, but getting a move back above the 200-day as RSI bounces off that oversold zone. All right, so that concludes today's video on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you'd like to know more about our services, how to get a systematic and objective approach in your analysis process, check out trendinvestorpro.com or follow me on Twitter at Arthur Hill. Please, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks again for tuning in and have a great day.